Hello friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and in today's video I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the week that we had. It was a crazy week, one of those weeks where, like the title says, everything felt like it was on fire. Physically, up here in northwestern Ohio, we had heat advisories for the majority of the week. Temperatures were 95 plus degrees with humidity between 80 to 90% some days. Very uncomfortable, especially for us because we don't have central air in our home. We do have one window unit that does cool down a portion of the downstairs area of the house, but we have an old farmhouse. It was built in the 1800s, and we just haven't prioritized putting air conditioning in yet because it's typically in Ohio, there's only 2 or 3 weeks out of the year that is this uncomfortable, and we're hoping that now it's done and over with for the year and things can get a little more comfortable. But besides physically being very uncomfortable this week, it was one of those weeks where the news was just very heavy. It kind of feels like the world's on fire too, doesn't it? With just lots of drama and escalating situations, both domestically here in America and around the world. And I got lots of messages from people both here and on Instagram about how we deal with news like that. And so that's what I want to talk about. So, physically, when things are really hot, what we did this week is we avoided using the kitchen. I did anything I could to avoid firing up my stove and my oven inside the house because my kitchen was already 80 plus degrees and I did not need to heat it more. So, we did a lot of cooking outside on the propane stove. I used the grill and we used the sun oven a lot. And we just did a lot of very simple cold meals with sandwiches and salads. And thankfully, I harvested a ton of romaine at the beginning of the week to prevent it from bolting in this heat. So we could have salads every day if we wanted to, and that was great. So we spent a lot of time outside then with the kids in the beginning of the day and the end of the day playing in water to stay cool. But otherwise, we really did avoid going outside during the height of the heat in the middle of the day. And so it did limit the amount of kitchen work and homestead work that I could bring you this week in a video. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't busy, because keeping busy with my hands and in my daily routines is the best medicine when the world feels like it's spinning out of control. If I dwell on the things in the world that can produce anxiety that I can't control, then it'll just produce that anxiety and it'll fester and grow, and then I'll worry about my children and their future and things like that. But what I prefer to do is to hand it over to the Lord and just get busy working with my hands. You know, we live a lifestyle here of preparation. A lot of the questions that I got this week centered around, are we doing anything more this year to prepare for uncertain times? And I'm not doing anything different this year than I do any year. We don't prepare here out of fear. We do the activities we do in growing our food and preserving to build a big pantry just because it brings us peace, whether the world is at peace or it feels chaotic. It just feels good to work with your hands, prepare for your family, and be busy. And so that's what we did this week. We preserved some food. I homeschooled the children. I just kept myself busy and focused on the things I can control in my home, which is feeding my family really good food, preserving things for when we're out of the growing season and we need to feed the family in the winter, educating them to the best of my ability using our curriculum and the learning experiences that our life and homestead provide. And anything that is beyond my control, I just pray about. And yeah. Now, this attitude doesn't mean burying your head in the sand. I do want to be informed about the things that are going on in the world for myself, and because as a home educator, I am in charge of teaching my children about current events and everything that's happening in the world. And so we don't want to live in a bubble, and we do listen to the news and watch it and talk about it, but we don't dwell on it. And we're not going to allow it to produce anxiety and fear, because dwelling on it there's nothing we can do productive to solve that issue. All we can control are the things that are happening in our home. So this week, I also took a trip. It was about a 5 hour total trip, 2.5 hours to get there and 2.5 hours back. And it was actually, I didn't mind the drive this week because I got to sit in an air conditioned car, which felt very lovely. But I drove up to meet a woman that I met online who was getting rid of all of her canning supplies. And when I spoke with her and asked her why she was getting rid of it, she said that during the pandemic, she kind of got swept up into all of the doomsday anxiety thinking, and she started canning food just to pass the time while she was at home, and it made her feel good to stockpile tons and tons and tons of canned food. But she lived on her own, and she was canning things that she wasn't really going to eat in the future. And so years passed since the pandemic, and this food was sitting there, and she realized she was never going to eat this food. So she began dumping out the jars and looking for someone to gift all of this used canning gear to. And so she thought of me, and so I drove up to pick it up and met her. And on the drive back, it just had me reflecting on the responsibility in the homesteading community online to make sure that we're not instilling panic and fear in you. There are a lot of channels that talk about doomsday scenarios and prepping, and I mean, no disrespect to them. They're just sharing their truth and what they feel led to share. But I never want to create a sense of anxiety in any of you, and I never want to give the impression that I preserve all of this food for my family because I am so extremely fearful of world events. The Lord never asks us to do things out of fear, and I've always said that I felt called to the homesteading lifestyle by the Lord to do this because it was good for my family. I wanted the homestead to provide learning opportunities for my children, the ability for them to learn where their food comes from, to learn how to work hard and produce a strong work ethic and character in my children. And because we have food allergies and health challenges in our family, it was a way to ensure that we know everything that is in the food that we eat. And so my heart in being here is just to share the blessings of this lifestyle, those things that it can do for your family and for you, to just get you closer to your food and to enjoy the activities that are included in this lifestyle. But I've never wanted to give the impression that this lifestyle is about preparing for doomsday scenarios. We do this because we think it's wisdom to have a stockpile of food in the home, not just because we're on the brink of war, because there's a global pandemic or things like that, but because you never know when illness could come to the family and you're not available to cook meals, so it's nice to have some canned food that's easy for the children to warm up on the shelves. Or maybe there's a sudden job loss in the family, and so having a stocked pantry allows you to have a little breathing room in your budget for a few months while you figure out something else. Or maybe it's just about wanting to feed your family the healthiest food and you really enjoy gardening and canning. And so this cycle of growing the food and preserving the food is what it's about for you. So let me be an encouragement to you to not get swept up into any kind of anxious canning and preserving. We're on the beginning of the Every Bit Counts challenge. We're just about a month away from that beginning, and I want to talk about what that means. So every August, I challenge myself to can something or preserve something through other means other than canning. It could be freezing or freeze drying, dehydrating, lacto fermenting, anything like that. And I just try my best to preserve at least one thing every day because that's what I can manage as a very busy mother. Sometimes I don't have time in my schedule to allot to entire days of bulk canning, or I don't want to use up my weekends to just can all weekend long because that's the only time we have as a family with my husband home and all of us together to do fun activities. So if I just do little activities here and there throughout the week, I find that by the end of the month, we have a nicely stocked pantry that has helped us get all of the food that we've grown in the garden into jars, or food that we've purchased from local farmers, get that into jars or in the freezer so that we're prepared for the winter. So every year, I encourage you guys to follow along with me on that. And I just want to emphasize that in doing this, I'm not inviting you to come and prepare in some kind of fear-based way to can as much as you possibly can in order to be to help some sort of anxiety that we're feeling about the news. Only the Lord can take that anxiety away from you. What we are doing, though, is encouraging you to just do a little bit here and there to help preserve your harvest so that you can have quality food put away for the winter, and you can enjoy the process of building a pantry for your family. So, yes, does the world feel like it's spinning out of control sometimes lately? I totally agree that it does, but we're going to continue here to do the same things that we do every year because, to be honest, the world has always felt like it's spinning out of control. This year is no different than any other year. And so all we do is we just put our nose to the grindstone. We do the next task in front of us, just focus on the next best thing. We feed the children, we grow the food, we enjoy the time that we have together as a family, we teach the homeschool lessons, do all of the things, and we try to enjoy today because today is what we have in front of us, and we can't control anything that's happened in the past or what is going to happen in the future. Only God knows what's going to happen. So, anyways, I just wanted to be an encouragement to you today, to tell you how I'm handling the things that are happening in the world. Now, as far as the heat goes, thankfully it is starting to cool down physically. So we are looking forward to, in the next week, being able to get back out into the garden after about 4 or 5 days of these extremely hot temperatures and not really being able to do much in the garden besides pull a few weeds in the morning and in the evening when I could tolerate the heat a little bit. And then we had thunderstorms the last 2 days, the rain. I have a feeling I'm going to have a huge mess on my hands when I finally get out there. But we're just like the Every Bit Counts challenge with canning, doing what we can just a little bit every day. That's the attitude that I'm going to take when I return to the garden later on today. I'm just going to take it one bed at a time, one task or crop at a time, and we'll just get whatever we can get done, and what we can't control, what we can't get to, we just kind of leave it in the Lord's hands. And you know what I've learned? I've been gardening for about 18 years now. 10 years here on the property that we're currently at. And what I've learned is that even if I can't give it 100% because life throws me curveballs and I get busy, or I'm dealing with morning sickness, or I have a small infant that requires a lot of my attention, anything that could prevent me from getting in the garden, the Lord is faithful to provide despite my efforts. So sometimes, ironically, the years where I haven't been able to spend as much time weeding as possible, or I didn't fertilize maybe like I would if I'm giving 100% of my attention, those are the years where I seem to be blessed with certain crops that grow abundantly. So I think a lot of times we fall into this trap of thinking that it's our efforts that produce these great results. And so we work so hard to try to do these things. But it's funny that every once in a while the Lord will humble us and show us that even without our work, He is faithful to provide. Maybe sometimes it's not so much us and our worry and our anxiety and our work. Maybe all along it has been Him carrying us through it and doing the work for us. We just think we deserve the credit for this work that we're doing. So we're just going to keep plugging along and see what the garden gives us this year. We have cucumbers growing right now. I'm about a couple days away from being able to harvest the first of those, which is exciting. The beans are flowering. We're going to have green beans soon. We have melons, zucchini, tomatoes, peppers that are all beginning to grow. So it's such a very exciting time. The fireflies are out, and the children have been enjoying running around in the evenings. And it's always a special time of year in June and July when we get to experience that. So don't get swept up into this thinking of doom and gloom where everything is terrible and on fire and we need to worry. There is so much beauty in the world. There are fireflies to enjoy and memories to be made with your families and delicious food to grow and preserve. And we're just going to focus on those things. So I will be back next week. Hopefully, I can actually get some physical work done with the temperatures and bring that in a video for you next week. But until then, we're just going to keep our nose to the grindstone and keep plugging along and bring you along for the process. So, all right, friends, have a wonderful week and be blessed. We will see you next Sunday.